Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Good to see you, sir.
Okay, we are here on case number 2021 CF 519. Davis. We are here for sentencing, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, Your Honor. That's correct.
I've reviewed the file, and I see that that Judge Lester obviously took this plea back in March.
Yes, sir.
There is case law that indicates that well, obviously we're aware that the trial judge needs to do the sentencing, but also the case law indicates that the successor judge plea, there has to be some finding. So I want to talk about that before we continue.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, Judge Lester is retired. Both sides agree to that.
Yes, sir.
He's unavailable to conduct the sentencing hearing today.
Yes, sir, we understand that.
I don't have any notes from Judge Lester other than what was indicated in the file. So all I know from the file is that I've done extensive factual discovery on what is available. So I made myself available, or I made myself acquainted with the facts of the case, and I read over the plea agreement, or not. Well, I guess it's just the straight.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I just want to make sure it's on the record that as a successor judge, there's no objection to me hearing the sentence or conducting the sentence.
No objection from the defense, Judge.
And no objection to saying, Your Honor, that fact that was one of the issues contemplated during the past few months regarding Judge Lester's retirement and Your Honor taking the bench. And I believe even in the pleas, and when we subsequently passed it, we put it clear also on the record about Your Honor coming in and giving the sentence.
Okay, so that's on the record at another place.
I believe he's correct, Judge.
Okay.
That been discussed.
All right. As I said, we're here for sentencing hearing. Is there any reason we should not commence from the state?
No, Your Honor received the PSI, and there's no objections on behalf of the state.
Yeah, there was a pre-sentence PSI that was conducted. Your Honor should have a copy of that. There's no objection.
Actually, I do not have a copy of that. I have a couple of things, but that is not one.
Your Honor, I have a printed out PSI. This was done quite uniquely in this case because it was done pre-plea. So the PSI did a factual background and as well as a criminal history, which I'll be elaborating during the sentencing statements. But it actually made no specific recommendation since it was done pre-plea. So there is no recommendation where PSI would normally make a recommendation. This one actually does not have a recommendation on it.
Well,
but you have a
I
copy.
reviewed it, so if you want me to consider it, which I probably should, somebody needs to give me a copy.
Yes, I have a copy. If Mr. wants to take a quick look at it. The only things I wrote are just F&Ms for the felonies and misdemeanors.
Okay, have you agreed on any procedure on how to proceed?
Your, I believe the victim's family has requested to defer, I guess, the statements until after the defense makes their statements and their victim impact. I believe both sides are going to have statements and both sides will have argument.
Okay, Mr. Burton, whatever.
Thank you, Judge. Judge, we only have one witness to call today, which will be Mr. Davis' wife, Jennifer. Mr. Davis?
I'm going to have her sit and stand when she's sworn in, is that right?
Yes, please, yes.
Just come to the podium, the clerk will swear you in, and then I'm going to have you come up here with us.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth in this court proceedings, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Just have a seat up here.
Okay.
Your name required when you raise.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Davis. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Jennifer, J-E-N-N-I-F-E-R, and my legal name is actually Snyder, S-N-Y-D-E-R.
Very good.
No problem.
Ms. Snyder, so how is it that you know Mr. Jonathan Davis?
We met in 2004 and have been together since our first date on his birthday.
And how old were you at that time?
19.
So you've been, I guess, you call them high school sweethearts.
Yes, sir.
And so that first date, you were 19, he was 21. How long after that did y'all get married?
We got married in 2007.
All right, and do you have any children?
We have two. One is here. He's here.
And what's his name?
Jaden.
Jake?
Yeah, Jaden.
I'm sorry.
Jaden, and then we have Miss Gia. She's in kindergarten right now.
Gia is a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how old is she?
She's turned 6.
I'm 6. So, and I think Jonathan's been in custody for almost 2 years now?
Almost 3,
3
actually.
years. So obviously you've known Jonathan for most of his life, or at least his adult life. Can you explain to the court and the gallery what kind of man Jonathan is, what kind of father, what kind of man?
A very hardworking man. Always working to make sure that we had everything that we needed. And we may not have everything we wanted, but we had everything we needed. And a really good father. And was really, really close with the little one. I'm sorry for that.
Okay. Take your time if you need to.
Was very close with the little one, with our daughter.
With Gia?
Yeah. She was always on his shoulders when he was home. When he was home, not working, he was teaching his son like motors and just what like fathers and sons do. And then Gia had to tag along, so she'd be on his shoulders. And they were always out in the yard, like raking or just doing stuff like that.
Okay, so fair to say Gia's his little princess.
Quite a lot.
So obviously you know why we're here today.
Yeah.
And have you had any opportunities to speak to Jonathan about this situation, how he feels about it?
Thank you. I suppose, I mean, it's hard to conversate about, but right now,
Well, has he expressed any issues, concerns, remorse? Have you talked to him about how he feels about it? And on the jail call?
I thought you meant about our kids.
About
Yeah.
what happened here?
Yeah, there was a bond, he was going to have a bond reduction hearing, and he declined it. I mean, he's terrible, and all this.
But that was right at the beginning of the case. In fact, I think when I first came aboard, that
Yes,
actually was actually been filed. But we did not move forward when Jonathan's requested that, right?
Yeah, Jonathan requested not to have a bond reduction, and he's not been bonded out.
And part of that was because he didn't want to put the family through any stress.
He would have, yeah, he didn't want to have he knew that the family would have to be there, and he just, it felt so terrible. Like, whenever he called it, when he turned himself in, he just thought she was hurt.
Right. Now, so the accident occurred, we don't know for sure, but the first officer, I think, arrived at the scene about 12:40, something like that. That same morning, was Jonathan with you when you called the police? Or was he with someone else?
No, he came home,
Right.
turned himself in.
Right.
Or came home, called, and then they didn't show up for 8 hours. So if you pull up the 911 call, you can see the time when he actually called, and then 8 hours later they showed up and took his statement, and they said, "Well, I'm here to arrest you." They took his statement, and then they pulled back in the driveway and they said, "We just got a call from the hospital.
Right.
We have to take you to custody."
Okay. But just to be clear, within 12 hours of the accident, it appears that Jonathan called the police.
Less than that.
Less than 12 hours. Once he learned there was a terrible accident,
Yes,
he called the police, admitted he was driving, and took
Absolutely.
responsibility. Is that right?
absolutely.
The part of taking responsibility is to talk about this bond motion. He didn't do that because he knew there was going to be a consequence and there was going to be some
Yeah,
incarceration.
he felt absolutely terrible. He didn't want to do anything to put the family through anything more.
The family of the victim, he didn't want
Put them through anything more and be out. And he just couldn't, his mother passed in a car accident when he was 12. And so he understands how something like that could really hurt, could destroy a family, a family unit.
Right. So yeah, You just said that Jonathan's mother was killed in a car accident on Mother's Day, is that
On
right?
Mother's Day, when he was 12 years old, yeah.
And I think he and his brother were waiting for her to come pick him up.
His brother's 3.
No, when the accident, when his mother passed away, I think she was going to get them, and she never showed up.
They were waiting for her to come home, and they had their Mother's Day fixed for her, but she, instead, the state trooper pulled up, and that's how they found out. So with him knowing that, he didn't want to put the victim's family through any further.
Is there anything you haven't told the judge about Jonathan that you think he should know?
But, just other, I mean, like,
Well, that's his character?
Yeah, the father he is, the family man he is, and things like that. Yeah, I mean, I've sent addressed letters to the judge explaining them, so if he's read them, then
Right.
we have that, right? Or,
Yeah, well, Judge Lester, it was addressed to Judge Lester.
Okay.
The record says it was a letter that you received, even though it was copied to the state, that she wrote. It was addressed to Judge Lester, because that was done at the time of the PSI. Okay. 2023. It's just one minute.
sure.
I don't have any further questions, Judge.
Any questions, Mr.
No issues, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there anything else, Mr.
Mr. Davis would like to address the court. I don't know if you do that now or at the end.
It's up to you. It's generally done at the end.
Wait for him to do it.
Sure, we have several. Our first witness is Mr. Jacob
Seifert.
Seifert.
Sorry.
So if you step up to the podium, put you under oath, and then you can give your statement or testimony.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth this court proceedings so help you God?
Sir.
I see your officer.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir. Do you mind introduce yourself to the court?
Yes, my name is Jacob Seifert. I'm a private investigator employed on behalf of the Equal Justice Project.
And Mr. Seifert, if I understand you prepared a statement you would like to read to the court.
Yes, sir.
All right, you can read that.
My name is Jacob Seifert, the private investigator representing the Equal Justice Project, a nonprofit private investigative firm. My testimony is drawn from our comprehensive investigative report on this case, co-authored with the former dean of the criminology department at Florida State University, Dan Meyer-Catman. Our report examined the events leading to the crash, supported by police records and witness testimonials, along with an evaluation of the extensive criminal history of Jonathan Leon Davis. Our investigation confirmed that Mr. Davis drove an unregistered, uninsured vehicle, crossing into the wrong lane and colliding head-on with Cassidy Mongeon's car, killing her on the evening of April 10, 2021. He fled the accident scene, did not report the incident, and hid from accident investigators in a nearby wooded area. Furthermore, Jonathan Davis is a career habitual offender with a 22-page rap sheet from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement alone, not counting charges and convictions from other states. Over the past 25 years, he has been arrested at least 14 times, charged with approximately 18 crimes, and convicted 8 times. His offenses range from domestic violence and child cruelty to battery and assault with a deadly weapon. Significantly, Mr. Davis was convicted 4 times for driving without a license, including twice as a habitual offender, and was convicted for a 2012 DUI in North Dakota, which was not included in any Florida records. His record of criminality and suspended driving history demonstrate an absolute disregard for the law and the safety of others, which makes Mr. Davis a very dangerous man. Now, the court is responsible for sentencing Mr. Davis sufficiently to protect other innocent victims from Cassidy Mongeon's fate. The Equal Justice Project is concerned that Davis may receive a slap on the wrist. The legal process has dragged on for years, and the family has expressed frustration it has taken so long to hold Davis accountable. They worry that the minimum sentence, 4 years, will be imposed, with more than half of them already being served in the county jail. Considering the record we reviewed, this result would be a terrible injustice for a severe repeat offender and would reduce community safety. The tragic death of Cassidy Mongeon, caused by Mr. Davis' irresponsible actions, have left permanent marks on her family and her community. The Mongeon family and the Equal Justice Project urge the court to consider a sentence of 23 years in prison, followed by 7 years of probation, with mandatory alcohol and drug testing. This sentence is sought to prevent future tragedies and serve as a deterrent to potential other offenders. In conclusion, the extensive criminal record of Jonathan Davis and the systemic issues in addressing habitual offenders like him necessitate a rigorous response from the judicial system. We implore the court to acknowledge the gravity of Mr. Davis' offenses and the heartache endured by the Mongeon family, and to impose a sentence that reflects the severity of his actions and protects the community. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Do I have no further questions?
Do you have anything for this witness, sir?
Just briefly, so who is it that you work for?
The Equal Justice Project, sir.
And how is it that you got involved in this case?
The Mongeon family commissioned us to write an investigative report.
All right. And so in your investigation, you just reviewed documents, is that right?
Yes, sir. Many of them.
Did you interview Mr. Davis?
No.
So you don't know anything about Mr. Davis?
I wouldn't say that, sir.
You don't know him personally?
No.
Okay. So all you have is equal paper,
Yes, sir.
and what you believe to be an appropriate sentence.
Yes, sir.
Are you an expert
Yes, sir.
in sentencing? Are you familiar with guidelines, Florida state guidelines when it comes to sentencing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, tell me about the guidelines. What are they?
I don't have the information in front of me right now.
You said you know what the guidelines are.
Not by memory.
Okay. So you know in a general sense what the guidelines are.
I'm not sure what you're getting at, sir.
So what do you know about the guideline score sheet in Florida is points are assessed for every conviction, correct?
Yes.
Points are assessed for whatever the charged crime is, in this case, even the maximum death, correct?
Yes.
And then all those points are added up, and the number is subtracted, and it's multiplied by 0.75. Is that correct? If you don't know, it is correct. So when you do the calculation in Mr. Davis' case, what is the score?
I don't have that with me.
That wasn't part of your investigation?
No, sir.
That wasn't important to you to know to calculate what the guideline score might be?
That was not part of my investigation.
And are you aware there are any minimum sentences regarding this type of offense?
No.
You're not aware there's a minimum sentence required for this type of offense?
I'm aware that the minimum sentence is 4 years.
Okay. So these conclusions you make are just conclusions from you.
In our organization.
No further questions, Judge.
All right, thank you. Anything else for Mr. Seibert?
Nothing, Mr. Your Honor. Your Honor, our next witness is Cynthia Wilkinson.
This witness, please step forward. You just step up to the podium and clerk will swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth in this court proceeding, so help you God?
Have a seat, though. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
If you mind introducing yourself to the court.
My name is Cynthia Wilkinson.
Okay. And it's my understanding you prepared a victim impact statement.
Yes, I'm a retired correctional officer for Florida State Prison, worked there for 31 years, and I was trained in CPR and first responder type stuff, and so that's where my statement starts.
Yes, ma'am.
So thank you, Honorable Judge, for hearing my statement. My name is Cynthia Wilkinson. I was the first one on the scene, along with my husband, John. We were returning home from the Clay County Fair when we came upon the accident. It was like right immediately after the accident happened. There was nothing but darkness. My husband and I didn't say that. The Yukon was across the center line, and the Tacoma was in the eastbound ditch facing the roadway. As we approached, we parked our F-250 to the side, westbound, and like I said, it was dark. Well, our trucks shine on the lights, you know, where nobody else would run into the back of the Yukon, because it was definitely across the center line. I immediately went to render assistance, and my husband called 911 and used his flashlight to control approaching traffic. I went to the first vehicle, the Yukon, and saw Mr. Davis. He started stirring a little bit in there, and I was really concerned for him. And the driver's window was down, so I approached it. As I approached the window, he started coming out of the window. And I was trying to ask him to stop and let me look at him, because I was concerned for his health, and an impact like that, he could have had injuries that he shouldn't be running. But he refused to look at me, he refused to stop, and he began running. Ran westbound down 218 toward the 301. I then ran to the other vehicle that was facing out. And the girl in there, she was trapped. And I wanted to render assistance to her, but I couldn't because of the way that the vehicle was wrapped around her. Her arm was hanging out of the window. And I checked her pulse, and she was still alive at the time. And so the best I could do was just comfort her. And then the OnStar started coming on his vehicle, asking me questions. He had already started notifying that there was an accident, and there was a guy trying to get vitals from me, and I was running back and forth to the vehicles and stuff. That went on for a little while, and then the pastor that lives across the road, he came over, and he knelt beside her and held her hand and prayed with her. He never left her side, and other people came up. Another car almost came up and hit the back side of the Yukon because it was the dark side. We were waving it down, and those people came and joined into the prayer circle around Cassidy, which I didn't know her name at the time. But anyway, the more people came and more people gathered into our prayer circle around the girl. And then the EMS arrived. This all happened pretty quickly, you know, they were right on time coming. And then I went and gave my statement. I went and gave my statement to the sheriff's department. By the help of God, I was able to assist. However small in this accident, I wish I could have done more. As hard as we all tried, there was nothing we could do in the wreckage. I was able to pay attention to Mr. Davis, and I was able to give the investigators details on my encounter with him, and I identified him. I did get a good look at your face that day, and I really did want to help you. The accident weighed very heavy on my heart. Cassidy's family was in my heart every day because I knew how they felt. In 1983, I lost my mother in an auto collision, basically identical to the one that I came upon that day. Only she died at the scene and didn't make it to the hospital. I knew then I had to seek out her mother. I wanted to talk to her, and I wanted her to understand that we did our best to keep Cassidy not alone. She was not there alone, that we were rallying around her. So everyone stayed with her until she was loaded into the EMS vehicle and taken away. She was never alone. But my heart was bothered by the actions of Mr. Davis, his total disregard and the results of his careless behavior. Mr. Davis not only ignored me, but he not once did I ever see him look over there at the vehicle that was in the ditch that Cassidy was in. Her life didn't matter to him at that time. Only thing that he wanted to do was get away. So he ran. He ran. Mr. Davis, one day, will be able to pick up and go on with his life, but not so much for this family. His past record says a lot about him. He has no respect for the law or others to continue to put others on the roads in danger. Mr. Davis, you at some point need to ask his family for forgiveness when you are able to meet him. But most of all, I pray that you will ask for forgiveness from Jesus. Start soon and get your heart right and your soul together. All is not lost for you. Take advantage of a second chance that you were lucky to get, because it could have been fatal for both of you that night. At last, I feel I must ask for the max penalty for this man, whatever programs he needs to help him become a better father and a citizen. Thank you for the time to hear my statement, and my heart prayers will be with his family and your family as well.
Thank you, ma'am. I have no further questions.
Nothing to the fence, Judge.
Thank you.
Your Honor. Here, my next witness is Mr. Patrick Mongeon. And Your Honor, Mr. Casino Mongeon will be holding Cassidy's photo.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and swear to the truth of God?
Thank you.
See here.
Your Honor, this photo here in the white frame is the photo of my older sister, Cassidy. She was 23 at the time of this photograph, the same age as I am now. When I reflect on the events that unfolded on the early morning of April 10th, resulting in my sister's tragic and untimely death, and I think of life now as I know it, it's very depressing and unsettling. During my formative years, I looked up to Cassidy. She taught me so much important lessons through her actions. The lessons that stuck with me the most were the importance of being generous and kind to others, as well as the importance of standing up for your convictions. Reminiscing on the short time we had, I'm so fortunate that she was in my life. She was an incredible role model and older sister to me, and to this day, the life that she lived inspires me to be a better person. bond Cassidy and I shared was deeply rooted in our upbringing. We lived in a very rural area, and because of that, we did everything together. So despite Cassidy relocating to Jacksonville, we made sure to stay in touch. We would talk for hours on the phone, and she constantly went out of her way to visit me from Jacksonville. She also made sure to support me in every aspect of my life that she could. I cannot put into words the gratitude I have for her kindness and unwavering support while she was on this earth. My only regret in our relationship was not telling her just how much she meant to me. Since Cassie's been gone, I've been struggling with trauma. That morning on April 10th of 2021 absolutely destroyed me. I remember it so vividly. My mom receiving the phone call from Chris, which was Cassidy's boyfriend, that Cassidy was struck by a vehicle and had been hospitalized. No one in that moment was aware of just how badly hurt she was until my mom called the hospital. As soon as my mom got on the phone with the hospital, I could hear the fear and the uncertainty in her voice. And then in an instant, her demeanor had changed from being concerned to being completely devastated by the news on the other end of that line. They told my mom that Cassidy's heart had stopped beating multiple times and that her spleen needed to be removed. In those moments, though, I didn't know exactly what happened to Cassidy, as I couldn't hear what the medical team was saying on the phone, but I knew it wasn't good. I could feel the fear and uncertainty in that room. My nerves were shot and my mind was racing about what had happened to Cassidy. My parents had made the decision immediately to leave Cassidy what her final moments would be, and although I wanted to be there for her too, my parents decided to leave me behind in order to shield me from the psychological scarring that was to come from seeing Cassidy's mangled body. During this time, I was at home for what felt like an eternity. I held on to hope. I kept repeating the same phrases over and over again. I must have said it 1,000 times. Cassidy can't die. She's too young to die. Everything's going to be okay. And I was unaware that she was on life support, brain dead. My parents' last moments with Cassidy were nothing short of horrific. They had to see Cassidy, the kind, funny woman, one so full of life that they raised lying motionless, wrapped in bandages, connected to machines to keep her breathing. My parents had to make the decision to cut Cassidy off of life support and watch her die. Immediately afterwards, they made the drive back home to tell me that she passed away because they didn't want me to be alone when I heard the news. Being told that Cassidy passed away was the worst moment of my life. I ran outside because I heard their truck pull into our driveway, and I remember with whatever little amount of hope that I still had left, I asked him, "Is Cassidy okay?" And what my dad told me, he could barely get out the words. He said, "Pat, she's dead." And the psychological scarring from this, it didn't end on April 10th either. A short time after this, my mom received a phone call from the hospital that they had Cassidy's cell phone. We were so eager to get any pictures that we didn't already have for her funeral. And unbeknownst to us, when we went to the hospital, we were given a clear bag with the clothes that she died in. They were torn and pulled in blood. In the bag, my mom saw the shoes that she gave Cassidy for Christmas, and she began crying. We were completely mortified at what we were given. Knowing the phone was in the bag, I slowly began to pull it open. I will never forget the smell of those clothes. It was the smell of death. And I will never forget her clothes either. The sleeves of her shirt and around the neck were completely covered in blood. Cut lengthwise across the shirt, you could see where the paramedics had tried to save her. It was so graphic and overwhelming that after grabbing the phone from the bag, I threw up in the parking lot of the hospital. When I got home, I had to carefully reboot the phone, and I wasn't even expecting it to turn on, considering it was cracked and covered in her blood. Another unsettling experience from this that I will never forget was getting Cassidy's ashes from the funeral home. As I was carrying her ashes, I stood there, struck by the absolute finality of it all. I couldn't help but think this was my sister that I'm holding, and this was her existence now and forever as I would know it. No longer do I have my friend who I can talk with over the phone, joke with, and visit anymore. And this is how it's always going to be. Every time I look at her urn on the mantle in our house, it's a stab in the heart. I see the person who I love so much, someone who had already done so many great things and had so many other great things left to accomplish, gone. Since then, almost 3 years have passed, and I still struggle to come to terms with my sister's death. For me, it's a constant mental battle to even get in my car every day, knowing that there are people out there on the roadways who have no problem driving recklessly, fatally injuring innocent people and leaving them to die, like Jonathan Davis. To add insult to injury, the defense has continued to delay justice and accountability as long as it can in a desperate attempt to enable a deplorable lifelong criminal. I feel the actions of the defense have spit in the face of not only my family, but the Clay County court system as well. From the beginning, FDLE issued a crash report showing that Davis had crossed the center line, colliding with my sister's Tacoma, yet the defense denied this for almost 2 years. Additionally, the defense has managed to delay this case long enough where Judge Lester, who spent most of his time on this case, has since retired. The defense has wasted so much of the court's valuable time and resources, along with my mother, who's driven to almost every hearing. Additionally, many of Cassidy's friends and family members would have wanted their voices heard today, but they didn't get that opportunity because of the defense. Since 2 years have passed, many of Cassidy's friends have moved, and some have even since passed away. And even Cassidy's place of work that she was driving home from the night that she was killed has since permanently closed. The frustration of this does not end with this case either. Regarding the civil suit we have against Davis, he has shown no remorse for his actions. In a letter addressed responding to the civil suit against him, Davis had the audacity to deny any and all accountability. I find it particularly disturbing how anyone could write a several-page document full of lies, show no remorse to the family members that lives he ruined. Some things he said includes denying the loss of support and services, as well as the pain and suffering that he caused my family and I. He also denied the fact he fatally injured Cassidy with his reckless driving, and even went on to attribute his actions to my sisters. All of this shows that he could care less about the pain and suffering that he caused. Experiencing all of this in my early 20s has completely changed my view on humanity. I used to believe that everyone is capable of change and learning from past mistakes. However, that changed having dealt with Davis over the past 2.5 years. He's shown through his depravity that he has no accountability and no consideration for others. And he's shown time and time again that he does not belong on the roadways. He does not belong in society. He belongs in a cage where he cannot do this again to other people. Justice for Cassidy, 23 years prison and 7 years probation.
Thank you.
With that, I have no further questions.
Mr. Burton, please pull on this.
Nothing from the president.
Thank you.
My next witness is Ms. Christina Mongeon. And hold this photo will be fashion.
Please step to the podium and put this one in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth this court proceedings, so help you God? So help me God.
Thank you.
Your Honor, my name is Christina Mongeon. I am the proud mother of Cassidy Jane Mongeon. Before I tell you how my daughter's death has impacted my life, I want you to have a sense of who Cassidy Jane Mongeon was. She was a vibrant, hardworking woman who had a strong sense of self. She loved kayaking, walking nature trails, and reading books. One of her greatest joys was taking care of her dog, Maggie May. Cassidy was a workplace leader on the Jack's Hub Day Sword, where she was a member of the 512 Teamsters United movement. A 23-year-old woman, she was making a huge impact. This is the statement they issued shortly after her death. The 512 Teamsters United movement extends our sincerest condolences to the family, friends, co-workers, and union sisters and brothers of Cassidy Mongeon. Teamsters Local 512 lost one of its most dynamic, passionate, and courageous members yesterday. It was with great sadness we received the news that Cassidy had died, taken from her family and friends far too young. At just 23 years old, Cassidy quickly established herself as a true fighter for the working class, and working class women in particular. Cassidy was a workplace leader on the Jack's Hub Day Sword, filing grievances to enforce the contract and teaching her co-workers how to defend their rights too. Equipped with a deeply felt conviction to fight for justice, Cassidy played a major role as rank and file leader in our 512 Teamsters United Reform movement, campaigning for member-controlled union last fall and running for shop steward just last month. We remember Cassidy for how much she inspired all of us at the warehouse gates, talking with fellow Teamsters about her passion to have a stronger union, one that stands up for its members and defends our rights at work. Even a glance at her Facebook page will remind friends and coworkers that Cassidy's sense of justice did not end at the workplace. She spoke out for people suffering injustice across the city, country, and world. To our union work, she always emphasized the importance of having Teamster women at the center of our fight. And for that, all of us, her union sisters and brothers, are grateful. Teamsters across this country will feel the sudden loss of Cassidy, who represented the very best of our generation, a working class union woman who knew we can and must do better. We lost her far too soon, and we must honor her memory by continuing to fight the crucial battles that Cassidy tirelessly fought. Rest in union power, sister. May we honor the memory of your courage and conviction by continuing to fight. This next statement is by Christina Kittle, and she was a DePaul County lead organizer. As a woman in the movement to empower and uplift working families in the Jacksonville community, seeing Cassidy's enthusiasm and courage was a light for myself and all women who are unafraid to stand against injustice. Young, beautiful, and brave, it angers me still to know she is no longer able to grow with us in this fight. Her impact still empowers us, though. I was a union steward and teacher at the time that she was working with the Teamsters United campaign. I was working to help the Teamster bus drivers to unite with the DePaul Teachers Union for safer working conditions during COVID. I am sure I annoyed my spouse at the time, who was leading the Teamsters United movement with my never-ending excitement at seeing a young woman standing up against grown men who bullied workers for simply trying to fight for better working conditions. A young woman had grown men scared to walk into work. It was awesome. Cassidy is someone the city will never forget. Even in the brief moments where I had the pleasure of seeing her in action, I am still motivated by her drive. I am so sorry to the family and friends who were close to her. As an advocate, seeing another advocate taken from the movement is a type of loss no words can really describe. Beyond the impact of a workplace leader, Cassidy was ambitious, and she took on a second job as a server at Tabula Rasa Brewery. She was on her way home after working a shift there the night she was killed. I hope this gives you some insight into her work life. My life changed forever on April 10, 2021, when I lost my firstborn child and only daughter to a hit-and-run accident caused by a habitual traffic offender who has shown no remorse for his actions. On that morning, I received a call from Chris Stanton, Cassie's boyfriend. He informed me that there had been an accident, but he did not know Cassie's condition or extent of injuries. He only knew she had been taken to the hospital. I called the hospital, and nothing could have prepared me for the information the doctor gave me. Cassidy was fighting for her life. I started screaming and crying. They were having a difficult time stabilizing her. The accident caused multiple injuries. She had already been revived a few times. My husband, Michael, and I knew we had to leave immediately to be with her. I informed the doctor it would take us about 3 hours traveling from Tallahassee, but we would get there as quickly as possible. We decided to leave Patrick, Cassie's brother, at home. I have struggled with that decision. As his parents, we just wanted to protect him. Shortly after we arrived at the hospital, a nurse called me to let me know they were taking Cassidy in for a brain scan. Another nurse met us and took us to a waiting room. Some time passed, and the doctor came in to talk to us. The scan showed Cassidy had a traumatic brain injury. The pain and agony Michael and I felt upon hearing those words is indescribable. She explained to us that we could go into the room and be with Cassidy as long as we needed. Seeing our daughter in that condition was beyond heartbreaking. It's something we will never forget. There are no words. She was bandaged fully, except for her face and fingers. Her head and the rest of her body was covered. Her face was so swollen. There were so many tubes. We talked to her. They were telling her how very much we loved her. During this time, Chris arrived at the hospital, and they put him in a waiting room. I had to go in and tell him the news. I held his hand and walked him to her room. We let him spend some time with her. Then Michael and I went back in. A nurse brought me the paper to sign to take her off of life support. The hardest thing I have ever had to do is sign that paper. We all held her fingers and cried as we watched her take her last breath. A part of Michael and I died that day with her. There is no greater pain than losing a child. Things happened quickly after that. We had to leave Chris and get back on the road home so that we could tell our son Patrick in person. He had been calling and texting throughout the day, and we were very worried he was going to find out before we could make it back home. Watching Michael tell him was beyond devastating. While we were dealing with our unimaginable grief and informing family and friends, we received a call that evening that Davis had turned himself in. In the days and weeks that followed, our lives were chaotic, and we were all extremely depressed. Another event that happened during this time frame that forever affected my family was going back to the hospital to retrieve Cassidy's phone. I received a call that they had Cassidy's phone, and Patrick and I arranged to pick it up. When we arrived at the hospital, they gave us a bag with the phone that also had Cassidy's shoes and blood-soaked clothes she was wearing that night. The trauma of seeing and smelling those clothes is forever. Cassidy's funeral on June 5th, 2021. Cassidy was cremated and her ashes are in an urn on our mantle. I made a promise to her that we would not spread her ashes until we received justice for her. We had to handle Cassidy's estate because she died without a will. I became her personal representative. A civil suit was taken out against Davis, his wife, and the neighbor they purchased the GMC Yukon from that night that he drove. It was uninsured and it was not registered. The civil suit was filed in April 2022, basically a year after the accident. Davis responded to the civil suit defiantly. The audacity of his response was sickening, and we felt re-victimized by him. In addition to this, Cassidy's estate is still not settled because depositions of his wife and the neighbor, they were supposed to have happened twice. However, they have avoided both. The hospital bill to try to save Cassidy was around $80,000. Team Care, the insurance Cassidy had through work, paid most of the bill. They have put a lien on the civil suit. Davis has a lengthy, disturbing criminal history. His actions since the beginning of this nightmare for my family and I have been atrocious. He left my daughter critically injured on the side of a dark road. He admitted to having a cell phone on him. However, he did not have the human decency to call 911 or render aid. Instead, all he was concerned with was what would happen once law officers arrived. Therefore, he ran. I will always believe that the only reason he turned himself in was because the GMC Yukon was on the scene, and the officers, they were going to find out who drove it. Cassidy was brave and strong-willed. She always stood up for what she believed was right. I must accept that she is gone. However, I will never be able to understand why she was taken from us by such a coward. My only daughter, Cassidy Jane Mongeon, was taken from us way too soon. She never had the chance to continue her college education. She never had the chance to reach her career goals. I will never see her become a homeowner. I will never have the chance to help her plan a wedding. I will never have the chance to see her become a mother, and I will never know my grandchildren. These are all the things she wanted to accomplish at different phases in her life. Jonathan Leon Davis caused the death of Cassidy Jane Mongeon. He gave my family and I a life sentence. Every birthday, anniversary, and holiday, we have a void that will never be replaced. Only memories to help us through. I brought Cassidy Jane Mongeon into this world. I raised, loved, and nurtured her for 23 years. I was in awe of all she was trying to accomplish before her untimely death. I will forever struggle with the way she died, as well as the irresponsible person that negligently took her from us. As her mother, I am requesting the maximum sentence for Jonathan Leon Davis. 23 years prison, 7 years probation, justice for Cassidy.
Thank you. Mr. Jordan?
No questions, sir.
Anything else, Mr. Lucy?
Say, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Here, my next witness is Mike Munchen.
Sir, you don't need to come here. Okay, just sit there. Can you place him?
Please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth in this court proceeding, so help you God?
Yes. Go ahead, sir.
Your Honor, my name is Mike Mungeon. I'm Cassidy's father. When I woke up around 6 a.m. Saturday, April 10th, my wife Christina told me that Chris had frantically called her saying Cassidy had been in an accident and was hospitalized. She then called the hospital and they said that we needed to get there immediately. My wife and I drove to Jacksonville. Meanwhile, I did not understand exactly what was going on. However, my wife did. We were brought into a darkened room adjacent to the ICU unit, and it was explained to us that Cassidy was dying. We then went into the room that Cassidy was in. She was held together by bandages, wrapped tightly, similar to a mummy. I mean, it was holding her together. Okay, the bandages were. Cassidy's hands were exposed, usually slender, like hers, okay? But this time they were so swollen, they were bigger than my hands, okay? All right? The only thing that was keeping her alive were the machines that were soon to be disconnected by my wife and I with our signatures. We had to kill her own daughter, okay? We had to kill her. Immediately after signing those papers, we had to make a drive home to tell Patrick the drive home was horrible. Patrick kept on calling me. And I was forced to tell my wife, I said, we gotta lie to him. We can't tell him the truth. He's all by himself. Who the hell knows what he's gonna do? So when we got into the yard, you know, what am I gonna say? I said, you know what? I said, Cassidy's dead. And he screamed. And he screams like that I've never heard before in my life, okay? And I've seen people die, okay? Anyway, as a family, we're changed, man. We're outsiders. We don't fit in. I don't fit in with nobody. I'm mad all the time. All the time. Patrick was in college. He's like hanging out with his friends. You know, they're happy-go-lucky, and they believe they're going to live forever. But he knows that's not true. He knows he can be taken away at any time. My wife fears being in public. She's going down to the store. She doesn't want to run into people. She knows they're going to pity her. Oh, poor Christy. Or worse, she has to explain the reason she no longer has a daughter to someone. The scenarios my family are forced to be in because of him, because of you, are pretty bad and awkward. They're awkward for the people. The people are, you know, like, oh, how you doing, Christy? Oh, my daughter's dead. How's Christy Cassidy? Oh, she's dead. All right? I try to keep quiet because I don't want to say nothing. I don't want any therapist. I don't need anything like that because you know what? I don't need people to know what I'm really thinking. What I'm thinking about, Jonathan. And simple things like, hey, Mike, how you doing? They're difficult for me. How am I doing? How am I doing? I'm not doing too good. I'm not doing too good. I try not to think about it all the time. I try to stay busy. I work constantly, okay? I run a small tree service where I'm an arborist and a tree climber. I began climbing when I was 12 years old from my uncle, before they had any rules, you know? And I'm still a climber at 57 years old. And one of the reasons I do it is when I'm up in the top of a pine tree, I can't think about nothing else, you know? You gotta keep your mind on the task, or, you know. So, the work's hard, perils are many. Extreme heat, poisonous snakes, thorn plants, electricity, heavy equipment, and the trees themselves, it'll smash you and crush you. Because of this, the workers that work for me, they're like him, right there. They got drug problems, they got alcohol problems, they got learning disabilities, they got all kinds of problems. And a lot of them spent, time in jail or prison. So I deal with people like him all the time. I try to straighten out some of them, Hey man, don't drink that before you get home. Wait till you get home. Stop smoking meth. Stop, get yourself right. Stuff like that. I try to help them. But lately, I don't have the patience for that. I just don't. I see him right there, and I say, kick rocks, just get out of here, before I lose it. So I let him go. And it's hard, people, they got their excuses, why this and that, and all this other stuff, and it's my ex-wife, it's my kids, it's my this and that. No, it's you! But they won't, they don't, so I gotta let him go. We filed a civil suit against Jonathan and his wife and Teresa Jackson for the hospital bills, funeral costs, countless trips, blah, 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 all that crap, all right? We did not expect to ever be compensated financially through the civil suit. I mean, we figured, we're never going to see that money. But we wanted to send a message that deplorable actions have severe consequences. Teresa Jackson responded, saying the vehicle had mechanical problems, it needed fixing before driving, okay? She also, of anyone, showed a little bit of remorse. Hey, I'm sorry that your kid just got splattered all over the highway. At least she said something. Jonathan Davis, on the other hand, responded with a 7-page letter. He could have just said, we'll see in court. No, he had to go through like he was some kind of lawyer or something. I wonder who in jail helped him with that. But anyway, he told us the police were wrong in their report. that he had no right, I had no right in the case. It was Cassidy's fault. His wife Jennifer hid from the process server until she got speeding on a suspended license. Does that sound familiar? You know? And when we informed the court, she was served. In her written response, she said she would retain a lawyer and see us in court. She was then charged for driving on a suspended license, and then they let her go, because that's what they do around here. I guess you just let people go. Down where I'm from, they go to jail. Anyway, both Teresa and Jennifer did not show up for their depositions. Jonathan's criminal history began in 2002, when he was found with an open container in his vehicle. A year later, he was charged with lewd and lascivious behavior, found with a minor under 15. That's sick, man. That's sick. That is sick.
All right.
Anyway,
hold on, Mr. Mungeon.
I'm sorry.
Hold on. We're going to take a recess. I want to see counsel. 10 minutes.
All right.
It's what it is. It's the truth.
You're not saying it.
This case, anybody didn't do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Smith, if you continue to read your statement within the parameters after the stop.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm going to just avoid the whole...
I would start with in the crash.
Yeah. In the crash, Davis was the one who crossed the line in his junk vehicle, going the wrong way home with empty containers of alcohol in his Yukon. When he hit my daughter, he climbed out the window of his totaled vehicle barefoot and ran through the woods to escape. I believe the reason he hid before turning himself in was to avoid failing a sobriety test. He didn't want to get caught with the alcohol on him, so he ran. Needless to say, he'll do this again. He believes he is unimpeachable. He has never received any maximum sentence for his crimes, nor has the court ever been able to deter him for committing crimes. I feel his thirst for alcohol and drugs are unquenchable. You know, that's his whole thing, man. He wants to just stay high, stay drunk, have a good time. It doesn't matter who gets hurt or killed. He has displayed animalistic behavior, and he'd gladly chew his own arm off, his own leg off to get out of the trap. That's how he is, you know. The only reason he pled guilty is he feared a jury trial. And his defense attorney, they feared the jury trial, because they knew. He hopes to receive leniency, like he has always in the past. Justice for Cassidy. 23 years.
Have a seat, sir.
Thank you.
23 years and 7 for probation. I hope you get it, buddy. I hope you get it.
Thank you.
Take it, Mr. Mungeon. Is that seat?
I'll step down, sir.
Ms. Smith, did you sit down?
Do you have anything else, Mr. Seabush?
Your Honor, our next witness is Mr. Chris Canton. There you go.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth in this court proceeding, so help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat, right here, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. Do you mind introducing yourself to the court?
My name is Chris Canton. I live as Cassidy's boyfriend.
All right. Ms. Shannon, if I understand, you have a victim impact statement you'd like to read.
Yes, sir.
Can you read that?
On April 10th, 2021, my life was changed forever. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about Cassidy. I barely sleep at night due to intense nightmares, either reliving her last moments in the hospital or seeing images of her truck completely wrecked. Even if the dreams are not nightmarish and I do manage some sleep, I get to wake up to a real living nightmare, having to remember all over again that she is gone, and I'll never see her again. For nearly 3 years now, I've been seeing therapist after therapist just so I can continue living this nightmare without worrying my family and friends. Cassidy will never be alive again. and I have to live with, and that will live with me forever. Many of the things I enjoy doing the most are things Cassidy and I had in common. That is what brought us together, and it has been extremely difficult to get back to those things without her. I used to go kayaking several times a week. It was how we would unwind from our long days working, and we would forget how complicated life can be. For a very long time, it has been my way of resetting and rationalizing all of the difficult things in life. We would lose track of time fishing, watching wildlife, identifying birds, or just joking and laughing with each other. Sometimes we would play a game and see how much trash we could find and load onto our kayaks and paddle out with. She's the only person I've ever known who enjoyed these things the same way I did. It was a way of life that we shared very passionately. And now that way of life, the only way of life that has ever served me well and made me feel grounded, is gone. It feels impossible to enjoy any of those things knowing she never will. And now, even in the most peaceful places I know, I feel like I cannot rest. It feels as if there is no end in sight, and time drags on so slowly, knowing that she will never laugh again. She will never love again. She will never complete her college education. She won't climb the ranks of her workers' union and continue to become the best and brightest advocate of workers' rights she had always strived to be. She'll never run through the woods baying at the top of her lungs with her beloved dog Maggie. She'll never sing and dance again. She'll never lift someone up so high when they're struggling that they forget all their worries and just laugh and laugh and laugh with her. I could keep going for hours, but she will never get to do any of those things, and this world is a much, much darker place without her. Writing this victim impact statement feels like a nearly impossible thing to accomplish. There really are no words that accurately describe the loss I have felt, and even after reading this again and again, I do not think it's possible to summarize the effect this has had and will continue to have on me. Whatever sentence is arrived at today will be nothing compared to the pain of a mother and father losing their daughter, a brother losing his sister, or a lover losing his best friend in such a careless manner. We will carry this with us forever. We have no choice.
Thank you.
Your state's next witness is Denise Tanton.
Please raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the truth in this court proceedings and help you God?
Good afternoon, ma'am. Do you mind introducing yourself to the court?
My name is Denise Tanzer. I live in Keystone Heights, and Chris Tanzer is my son.
All right, in the stand that said you've written a victim impact statement?
Yes.
Could you read that to the court?
Right. It's almost 3 years. It's really hard to keep your thoughts concise and in order after you've thought about sitting here and saying it out loud after all this time. I want to start with the first time I met Cassidy. She and Chris came out to Keystone Heights pretty early in the pandemic. They were looking at a property that they thought they might buy. Cassidy was driving, and my partner and I had already gotten there. Cassidy pulls up in that little red truck, and she immediately hopped out of the car and rushed toward me and started to put out a hand, and she said, "Oh, I'd shake your hand, but the pandemic." And then she laughed, and I laughed, and I said, "Same." And I said, "Cassidy, I saw your bumper sticker. You're a Teamster." And she said, "Teamster Local 512, as loud as could be, as proud as could be." Her face lit up. And I knew right then that she was something special. We wandered around the property as one does. It was like 5 acres. We talked about the things that maybe they could do with it, maybe things that they couldn't do with it. Just kind of getting to know each other. Cassidy was not afraid to share an alternate opinion from something that I said about the property. She was young. She could have deferred to me. She didn't. She spoke her truth. She shared what she thought. And as we were kind of walking back to the front of the property, she said, "You know, you see that line of palm trees? I don't know what they were. I don't know anything about it, but I'm sure I see them." She said, "Somebody cultivated those. Somebody was going to sell them and make a lot of money. They don't just grow like that." And I said, "How do you know that?" And she said, "My dad's a tree guy. He taught me all sorts of stuff." A little bit later that day, we went over to our house. It's the first time Cassidy had been there. And as one does when your kid comes home, you ask them to do a chore for you, right? Something needs to be fixed. Can you help us with something, right? I said, Chris, can you go out to the side yard and help us put the rooster coop on top of the new platform we built? And Chris said, okay, sure. And he just kind of stood around like Chris does. And Cassie said, come on, Chris, let's go do it. And I'm all, Cassie, no, stay in. Chris can do it. She said, no, I'm going to help. So she went out and she got dirty with, y'all, some of y'all live in Lake County, you know what chickens are like, right? She just went right out there and did it. And as they were finishing, my elderly neighbor came outside. This 80-year-old man loves to talk to people more than anything in the entire world. Unfortunately, it was a pandemic, so he was stuck at home, couldn't talk to anybody. He saw Cassidy and he thought, oh, pretty little girl, I'm going to talk to her. And he did. And Cassidy talked to him and listened to him and chuckled with him and was not at all impatient with him, because that's who Cassidy was. She did the same thing with my mother-in-law who lived with us at the time. She went out of her way to talk to her, to hear her stories, to listen, and just be there. Cassidy Jane never met somebody she couldn't talk to or somebody she didn't want to listen to. She was never afraid to be herself or share her knowledge. She didn't hesitate to stand up for herself, or more importantly, for other people. She was always ready to help. It didn't matter what you needed, she was going to help. Cassidy wanted nothing more than to do a good job at whatever she did. She wanted to support her friends and family and her coworkers. And it was important to her that she take care of our waterways and our green spaces. She just wanted to make the world a better place in any way that she could. But on April 10th, in the middle of the night, Chris sent me a text message. Cassidy was in an accident. I got up and come across the room. By the time I got there, I replied, oh my gosh, is she okay? Is there anything I can do? And he didn't answer. And he didn't answer. And he didn't answer. Oh, it's fine. She went to bed. We'll figure it out tomorrow. They can borrow a car, whatever. But then a couple hours later, he texted me again. I don't know. They won't tell me anything. And that's when I knew it wasn't just a fender bender. That day was a nightmare. The week was a blur. Some of the things that do stand out for me were not being able to go inside the hospital because of the pandemic. There was a nice woman at a desk where you checked in. And she let me peek into the ER to see if Chris was there. He wasn't answering his text messages, but she said, I remember his eyes. He's got your eyes. They were beautiful. I saw him. And so she let me peek in, and he wasn't there. So I went out and sat in my car, and I sat in my car, and I sat in my car, and I drank a Gatorade, and I had to use the bathroom. They wouldn't let me in to use the bathroom because they weren't letting people in. So I got in my car and I drove around Orange Park looking for some place that was open where I could use the bathroom. I found myself at Publix, was just heading back to the hospital, wondering what was going on. And I got another text message. She's gone. I pulled up in the parking lot and saw my son. Devastated. I followed behind him as he drove to the house that they'd shared, wondering how I could fix this. Pulled up at their house, and there was Maddie, Cassidy's compound in the backyard, just banging her head off as she does. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, she's never going to see Cassidy again. None of us will. I remember driving back to my house with Cassidy, with Maggie, Cassidy's dog Maggie, and with Chris, and with Leaf, Chris's dog, wondering how we were going to put the pieces together again. What were we going to do? I remember the moment that I learned that Jonathan Davis had turned himself in. I remember the moment when I pulled in his history on the Clay County website. I remember I'll be calm watching my son sit on the floor and hold the dogs and cry. I remember later that week driving into Kingsville on one of those rural roads and having a car coming toward me in my lane. And it didn't pull back in. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to go in the ditch. This can't happen. And just at that moment, the car pulled back to their lane. I pulled over. I just cried. Because what was Cassidy doing at that moment when Jonathan Davis hit her? Was she listening to her favorite song? Was she thinking about texting her brother the next day? Was she going to call her mom? Did she even know that he was about to hit her? Did it hurt? I've always been the kind of mom, or the kind of person to say drive carefully, or text me when you get home. But after April 10th, it's more than just something you say. It was like a mantra, or a prayer, or a protective saying, whatever it is you believe, because that's what it was, it's more. My family and friends became obsessive about texting me when they get home. When guests come to stay in my home, and they're out and about without me, they text me to let me know what they're doing, to let me know when to expect them, so that I won't worry, because they know that I will worry. I will worry a lot. And I worry because now I know. I know what happens when people like Jonathan Davis are on the road. In the last 3 years, I've read so many stories about families who've experienced what we've experienced. I've gotten close to the Conway family who live here, who lost their child Gavin in Clay County last year. I know just how often people like Jonathan Davis hurt people. He's been given dozens of chances by the Clay County Court. He's been given the opportunity to learn dozens of lessons over the course of his life. With every law he broke, with every charge he pled guilty or no contest to, with every fine he refused to pay, every time he hid from the law until he couldn't hide anymore. Your Honor, Cassidy wasn't put on this world, on this earth, to be the lesson that he needed in order to become a good person. Cassidy Kane's life was worth more than that. Please ensure that justice is served for Cassidy and for her family, for her friends, and for this community. Thank you. Thank you.
Your State's last witness is Amy Hyman.
That's for you.
I can step up to the podium, please.
Please raise your right hand. Please swear to tell the truth, so help you God.
Thank you.
You're welcome, whenever you're ready.
I am Christy Mongeon's maternal aunt, older sister of Christine. And I'm going to read my statement. Cassidy Jane Mongeon, age 23, killed by Jonathan L. Davis. I don't know that I could possibly put into words all of the emotions, stress, and unrelenting heartache caused from this senseless crime. Our family is forever shattered once again. A young aunt returning from her honeymoon, killed. A grandfather, age 67, and his grandson, age 4, killed. An uncle, age 31, killed. Another aunt permanently disfigured, and another cousin, age 8, with permanent brain injury. All caused by drunk, impaired, and or habitual offenders. This has affected my family for my entire life. And then Cassidy. When does it end? Cassidy was a compassionate and very goal-oriented young woman. She worked 2 jobs to support herself and to save money to continue her pursuit of a degree from Florida State University. She had already selected classes for the upcoming fall semester. In her job with UPS, she joined the Teamsters Union and she ran for a stewardship. She wanted to make a difference and advocate for workers' rights. In her free time, Cassidy would spend hours kayaking and removing trash from the Florida waterways she enjoyed. She loved spending time in the outdoors and believed strongly in protecting and preserving Florida's natural resources. Her memorial service was held at Colorado Springs State Park, which she also loved. We will never know what great accomplishments she would have attained with her determination to be a productive member of society and to make a difference in this world. As for Jonathan L. Davis, with his extensive history of driving violations and discovery of yet another pending license revocation at the time of Cassidy's death, I feel that it would only be a matter of time before he would resume the same repeated behaviors and complete disregard of the law, and that he needs to be held fully accountable for his deplorable actions and callous disregard of human life. Respectfully.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, State has no further witnesses.
Okay, is there anything else from either side to be presented?
Just arguing on it.
We'll have to speak with you.
Yes, Your Honor. One moment, sit down. Your Honor, accountability and responsibility cannot flee the scene of an accident. In cases of leaving the scene involving death, that accountability and responsibility must be pursued, must be prosecuted. That's exactly what we're here today, Your Honor. For a daughter, a sister, a loved one was stolen. Her life was taken in an accident. And instead of Jonathan Davis staying on the scene, rendering aid, calling law enforcement, he fled from that scene without an afterthought to someone's daughter, without a second thought for someone's sister, without even an ounce of consideration for someone who's loved. And that is why we're here today, Your Honor. And that is why the state of Florida has made leaving the scene of an accident involving death a first-degree felony. Not a third, not a second, but a first-degree felony, punishable by 30 years in Florida State Prison. Now, as the defendant stands before you and as the statutes apply, he has a 4-year minimum mandatory. That is set by statute. So, Your Honor, the state would argue, Your Honor, has discretion between 4 years and 30 years. But when we look at the purpose of sentencing, and when we look at sentencing guidelines, when we look at the statutes, we see that the primary purpose of sentencing is to punish the offender. Rehabilitation and traditional considerations continue to be desired goals of the system, but they assume a subordinate role to punishment. The penalty imposed by this court or any other court in the state of Florida must match the severity of the offense and the circumstances surrounding the offense. The severity of the sanction should be increased with the length and nature of the offender's criminal history. Your Honor, when we look at the circumstances of this case, of the defendant going head-on into the victim's lane, causing the accident, immediately getting outside of his vehicle, and without an ounce of regard to the victim he left in that mangled vehicle, fleeing responsibility and accountability. When we look at the criminal history of this offender, when we look at the 11 misdemeanors and 3 felonies, going back to 2001, Your Honor, and I highlight the criminal history of this defendant because in sentencing, lawyers argued it's kind of a scales of justice, when we must evaluate the safety of the community and whether there's any rehabilitation that we can offer the defendant, and how those measure up. But with each offense the defendant has in his history, with the circumstances of the case, the scales of justice weigh heavy towards protection of the community. We have a defendant here, according to the PSI, in 2001, had possession of marijuana. Then in 2003, the defendant was arrested for a lewd and lascivious molestation that eventually pled for a felony child abuse. Then in 2005, he was arrested for an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon that was eventually brought down in county court as a criminal initiative. Then in 2008, we have yet another possession of cannabis under 20 grams. Then in 2009, we have another possession of drug paraphernalia. Then in 2009, we have driving with no valid driver's license. And the driving offenses in this case, particularly in the case of traffic homicide, are particularly egregious because we have a defendant who has a history of driving on suspended license, driving without license DUI. 2009, he had another driving while license suspended. 2011, we show possession of cannabis. Again, another adjudication. In 2012, another driving while license suspended. Then in 2013, because of his history of misdemeanors and driving while license suspended, in 2013 the defendant actually pled guilty and was adjudicated guilty of driving while license suspended as a felony habitual offender. But that didn't stop him, because in 2015, again, he was arrested for another driving while license suspended or revoked as a habitual traffic offender. Then it continued, 2016, unafraid. 2017, again, driving with no valid license. 2019, possession of controlled substance. In 2020, he was actually arrested of domestic battery. The same victim we actually had here testified before him. Now that case was dropped. Now obviously, 2021, the case at hand. But Your Honor, his criminal history of 14 different convictions, leading the scale towards the protection of the community. So we have an individual who is his first time, second time, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th. It is his 14th time before a criminal judge on a criminal case. And that's not even counting the out-of-state DUI in 2012. And again, the criminal history in this case particularly is egregious when we have a defendant who fled from the accountability and the responsibility because of his actions and leaving a scene involving death. A brother no longer has his sister. A mother no longer has her daughter. A father no longer has his little girl, Cassidy, or Cass, as they used to call her. Her boyfriend no longer has her by his side. It was clear from the victim impact statements that this crime obviously not only offended Cassidy, but it affects her family. I won't repeat it, but a daughter, a sister, a lover, gone. Left at the scene with no regard. And that's what makes it particularly egregious. It's particularly egregious that in this case, that defendant actually admitted to law enforcement he had a cell phone. That he could have called 911. But he didn't. He left the scene without regard for Cassidy Mongeon, leaving her on the side of the road. Accountability and responsibility cannot flee a scene. And when they do, they must be followed, they must be prosecuted. Now, Your Honor, the family has come here before you. And although the defendant can be sentenced to up to 30 years in state prison, although a mother has lost her child, although a brother has lost a sister, and a father has lost his little girl, and the memories they will make, a father never able to walk his daughter on her wedding day, a mother not being able to go wedding planning and do things mothers do with their daughters, a brother not having a sister to talk about and talk to. But even though they went that, they have shown mercy for this defendant. Because they have not come before Your Honor asking for 30 years, which would be understandable. They have come before Your Honor asking for 23 years, followed by 7 years of probation. And Your Honor, the 23 years hold a significance for the Mongeon family, because 23 was the age of Cassidy when she was left on the side of the road by that defendant. 23 years Cassidy lived on this earth, trying to make workplace a better workplace through her work at Teamsters, trying to make Florida and its natural resources better through her work and the outdoors. For 23 years, she was a loving daughter, and she was a loving sister. And although the Mongeons would have every right to come in and ask for 30 years behind bars for what that defendant did, or better yet in this case, failed to do, they have shown mercy. And it's because of that mercy that they asked for 20 years in Florida State Prison and 7 years of probation. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Durden.
Thank you, Judge. Obviously, this is a very trying and difficult time for all parties. The family of Cassidy is beyond belief hurt, upset, angry, and all with reason. The couple things I think are important review, Judge, is that even using Mr. Bustos' own words, accountability and responsibility. Yes, it's clear that Mr. Davis left at the moment of the accident. It's not clear from the evidence presented in court why he left, but he did. But he left in a moment of fear and confusion after a very significant impact of the cars. He would tell you, Judge, he did not know that he hit another car. And when he found out, within less than 12 hours after the accident, when he got home and heard that there was an accident involving the car he was driving, the first thing he did was call the police. Even the family has admitted it. So they understand, they even said on their own that they know that he turned himself in. And so, there's a lot of talk about Mr. Davis not accepting responsibility. I think that the evidence and the facts are contrary to that statement. Once he knew that he knew he was in an accident, obviously, but he did not know he was in an accident with another car or with another individual. And so the moment that he found out, less than 12 hours later, I think the accident was about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I think the note showed he called the police about 12:30 in the afternoon. When he called the police, he admitted, I'm the driver. He went and interviewed with the officers and told them I was driving. It was my fault. Yes, he did not hide the fact. He didn't try and run, as far as hide from the authorities. He immediately contacted me and said, it was me. I'm responsible. I need to take responsibility for it. And he did. And that was April 10th of 21. So the very day this accident occurred, he accepted responsibility. I know the family feels like he hasn't, but he did. Also, there's a PSI report done from March of 23, where he again admitted to the officer doing the PSI report. In fact, his statement is that he's advised he's very sorry to the family and the victim for their loss. It was an accident, he panicked and was scared. Once he realized what had happened, he turned himself in to the authorities. I think that's very important, because many times we have these types of cases, when people run, they keep running. That's not the case here. You heard from Mr. Davis's wife about him being a very good, loving, caring father. We're providing, in the state was as well, some photographs of the family that are very telling, showing that he's a very loving, caring father. There's been a lot of talk about his record. He certainly does have a record, mainly misdemeanor. And on that point, it has been mentioned at some points during this proceeding about the guideline score sheet. And obviously, Your Honor is aware of how that works and how it's utilized. And I think it's important to note that with the wisdom of our conservative legislature, they have created a score sheet. When you add up Mr. Davis' score sheet, he scores 30 months. And that's important. Now, I do understand that the statute for even seeing an accident requires a minimum of 48 months. But I think it's important to recognize that his record, which has been talked about at great length, is by the score, by the points and the way the legislature set it up, is not so egregious because it comes up to 30 months. So I think that's important to note. And it's been said by everybody today, the word has been used, accident. It was an accident. It was not done purposely or with malice. It was an accident. And I think that's important. It wasn't done intentionally. He did. As soon as he knew that there was some serious concern with somebody in the other vehicle, he immediately took responsibility. So that being said, Judge, Mr. Davis, after I speak, would like to address the court in an allocution, and if the court would allow, we'd like to address the family briefly, either directly or within the whatever you allow. But that being said, Judge, we did try to negotiate this out early on. The initial offer we made was, the offer we made was 7 years, followed by 7 years probation. He felt that was a significant offer. Obviously, the family came back with what they've stated numerous times today, 23 and 7, which, although 30 years in prison is the maximum, 30 years of prison and supervision is the maximum. So it is a request that Your Honor sends Mr. Davis to the absolute maximum that you can. And we would ask the court to consider something significantly less than along the lines of what we've already offered. That being said, Judge, Mr. Davis went to the statement. We allow him to, at least with the family, to read what he'd like to them.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine.
Please raise your right hand. Please swear to tell the truth in this court proceedings, so help you God.
Yes. I'm sorry. I messed up. I wasn't thinking. I left the scene. Didn't even expect her to be hurt or anything like that. I really truly am sorry.
You're full of shit.
I stand before you today with profound remorse and heavy heart.
I knew it would have been.
Hold on.
I stand before you today with profound remorse and heavy heart. I'm fully aware of the gravity of my actions. I would like to express my sincere apologies to the court and to the family of Cassidy. I deeply regret leaving the scene of the accident when I knew I should not have done so. I acknowledge that my actions were inexcusable, and I accept full responsibility for my choices. I deeply regret my decision to leave the scene and not try to render aid. I understand that I violated the law and put the safety of the community at risk. There are no excuses for my actions, and I take full responsibility for the consequences of my choices. Your Honor, I want to explain the circumstances that led me to make this grave mistake. After the accident, I was scared and then shocked. There was a lot of things racing through my mind at the time, because I've been in more than one life-threatening incident prior to this. I chose not to hesitate and ran off into the woods. I know that was not a rational decision, and I will forever live with the knowledge that I should have stayed at that scene. I did not look around the accident because I thought that I was the only one in the accident. I now realize that I should have stayed and assessed the situation. If I would have seen the other vehicle, I'm not offering this as an excuse, but as an attempt to shed light on the thought process during that time. When I woke up and saw the television news regarding the accident and found out someone's life was in danger, I immediately called the authorities to turn myself in. I am truly sorry for the immeasurable pain and suffering that the accident has brought upon Cassidy's family and friends. Every night I go to sleep wishing that things were different and this did not happen this way. I have 2 children of my own, a 6-year-old daughter and a 17-year-old son. If something like this were to happen with my children, I'm sure I would be devastated. No parent should ever have to witness their child's death. I apologize to the court and Ms. Mongeon's family, who have been greatly affected by my actions. I'm ready to accept the consequences in any sense that you deem appropriate.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bush, I need to get the guidelines.
Yes, Your Honor. The exact guidelines in this case are 30.1 months, obviously, but not able to give a 4-year mandatory. So Your Honor has between 4 years and 30 years. But guidelines are 30.1 months, Your Honor.
I'd like to see that.
Oh, yes, sir. All right.
Is Mr. Mungeon still outside? He's left the courthouse? He's left the courthouse. These can't be guidelines.
Sir? Yes, sir. There's not the handle, but it would be.
Do you have time, sir?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we can email it.
Okay, so you don't, okay, fair enough. All right, thank you. All right, for the state, is there any legal reason why a sentence should now be imposed?
Nothing to say, Your Honor?
From the defense?
No, for the defense, Your Honor.
Mr. Gerber, please rise to the line. All right, this plea being entered before the court was accepted by Judge Lester. Now, I have a question before I proceed about the credit for time served, because the plea, we're not an agreement, it's just a straight plea, correct, Mr. Gerber?
That is correct, Judge.
There is a sentence, or a paragraph, acknowledges 717 days, which was the time at the plea, which I believe was in March.
That sounds correct, Judge.
That paragraph also says that if that's the amount of time served by agreement. I have questions about that, so Mr. Garcia, was that the agreement?
Your Honor, so it's a time served as of that moment. Obviously, you'd be entitled from that moment on, because he is entitled to whatever credit time he has served.
What is it?
It's 1,019.
1,019? Yes, sir. $418 in court costs. All right. The court having previously accepted the plea of guilty through Judge Lester and the counsel and the state acknowledging the necessity of the successor judge, me, passing sentences due to Judge Lester's retirement. I'm now adjudicated guilty of failure to stop and remain in a crash involving death. I'm going to sentence you to 20 years in the Florida State Prison. There's a 4-year minimum mandatory. You have credit for 1,019 days time served. I'm going to impose a $5,000 fine. There is no restitution, correct?
No, but it hasn't been until
36. So no restitution in this matter is none. We'll impose court costs of $418, and there will be a 3-year driver's license revocation. Sir, you have 3 years if there's anything illegal about this sentence to appeal. Is there anything else from the state?
Nothing to say, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Chairman?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
All right.
Let them go. You don't have to. This is my job. It's my job, and I do with an open heart.
Oh, you're eternally grateful.
We've been in this together. Thank you for fighting for us.
Thank you so much.
We've done this together.
I believe what you said. Thank you so much. I don't have the words, but you'll never know. You just won't. You changed me. You just... Thank you. It's not even... Listen, don't do that. You've got a long time.
20 years is baby for me.
Yes, please. Can I...
Everything over here is all.
It was all because of you guys. Everyone who spoke. Everyone who spoke. You know, I want to thank Ian and the ones who did speak, just showing up here. It makes a difference. All right, I'll pack my stuff. We'll go down, find your dad, power down.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you so much.
Oh, it helps so much, Jacob, you being here. It helps. I can't even do it. Just everybody. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for everything that you did for Cassidy. I'm so good here. You did all you could. Please let's do that.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I'm just about to say
I don't think we have time to do this now. I mean, I would tell them that I just sound like a more important than live shot, but that's just me. You might not get it again. That's good. Live shot, they can just push down.
She usually doesn't. Yeah.